This is going to be a bit of a divergence from my usual. As you're no doubt aware by the thumbnail and the title, this is a Final Fantasy IX retrospective. Final Fantasy VII was, like for a lot of people, my first exposure to RPGs in general, not just JRPGs, and it will always hold a special place in my heart because of that. 9, however, is my favorite story, even more so than Heavensward or Shadowbringers. So much so that I've bought the game 3 times. I have the greatest hits version on PS1, then I bought the remaster on PS4, and then again on Steam. Obviously, I'm still going to make videos for 14, but I want to expand and talk about other JRPGs as well. And with the new expansion appearing to be Final Fantasy IX inspired, with Viper using Zidane's weapons, and the new raid tier taking place in Solution 9, the pre-order minion being Zidane, and the collector's edition being a famous boss from Final Fantasy IX, and a Garnet minion. It seems pretty relevant to bring this up now, even though this video is only going to be the first 2 discs. My hope is that I can do this game justice, since it came out in November of 2000, and the PS2 came out less than a month prior, so everyone was playing with their shiny new games, while also entertaining everyone in the process. Now, I don't really want to focus on the dev team too much, or behind the scenes things. I'm very much a death of the author kind of person, but knowing the team can give you an idea of what to expect. Like, if you play a Yoko Taro game, you can expect a very heavy, depressive game. And if you like that, you'd be interested because of his name on the title. And I even bought the first voice of Dragon because I'm a Taro SIMP, so I think that is important at least. The director is Hiroyuki Ito, and written by Hironobu Sakaguchi. Also, this is currently a fairly hot button topic that I don't want to derail into a long rant, but I've learned that the localization of FF9 in some points conveys a different message or misunderstands what a scene is going for. I'm not a huge fan of changes like this. I understand that some things need changing and some wordplay won't translate, but as long as it doesn't change the story or characterization, I don't really mind. But I'm going to be talking about my experiences, which means using what the localization gave us. This also means I'm not really going to compare the 2 versions. But when you're done here, you should go check out Vagrant Chocobo's videos on the translation stuff if you want to know more. Okay, before we press new game, if we hold on the main menu for a short period, we get one of 2 cutscenes that shows the party members with a quote that defines their personality or the arc the character goes down. This could be a small spoiler due to how we meet them, but the characters are all in the manual, so is it really a spoiler? And now with all that preamble out of the way, let's start up a new game. And we are instantly greeted with an FMV of a woman on a boat, which turns out to be the dream of a princess. Then, the camera flies out of the window to establish the castle that we're going to start our adventure in, which also tells the player this is more fantasy than the previous 2 games, which had a more modern aesthetic. And after this, the camera zooms in through a window on an airship, giving us control over the main character, Zidane. The room is dark, so after the player gets a quick rundown of the controls, which I think is only in the remaster, Zidane lights a match and we get to explore around in the room with the goal of lighting up the candle on the table. But if you go look around a bit first, you can find some items laying on the floor, which teaches the player that there are reasons to go exploring, and with having a dark room means there's a possibility that you find these things before the candle. And once the room is lit, someone asks who's there, and we get the chance to rename Zidane if you want. But after you select a name, the other crewmates come out from behind the door only for the 4 of them to get attacked by a man with a dragon head. This works as a good tutorial, and gives the player a taste of what's to come before we go back to a bit of a slow burn in Alexandria. Speaking of combat, FF9 didn't really reinvent the ATB wheel. When the ATB gauge fills, you get to select an action. This can be attack, defend, use an item, a character-specific action, or change row. The first 3 are obvious in what they do, but each character has a classic Final Fantasy job that they embody. Zidane and his friends are all thieves, so they can obviously steal items from foes. And the last option lets you change between the front row, where you deal and receive more melee damage, and the back row, where you deal and receive less melee damage. At the end of this tutorial fight, the dragon head gets sliced in two to reveal that it was actually their boss, Baku. Now, at this point, you may or may not have noticed that the graphics and music are different than what you would see on console, and that's because I'm using the Moguri mod. This improves the visuals and has an option to remix some music tracks in the game. Along with a host of other options. Though, the only cheat I'd recommend enabling is the 100% steal rate, if anything, unlike what I did for this playthrough. It's really easy to turtle most bosses while you attempt to rob them blind, so this just kinda saves some time. Look at how long it takes to steal everything from these guys, even at 10 times speed. And it will only take longer from here because of worse steal rates. The rest can be fun, like permanent trance and max damage, but they aren't really my kind of vibe. And now back to the story. We get told our mission. The Tantalus group, which is us, are going to fly into Alexandria and kidnap the princess while distracting everyone with a performance of I Want to Be Your Canary, and then releasing a bunch of oglops, because everyone hates oglops. And while this is a case of, as you know, type dialogue, I've used it, and I've heard other people use it in normal, non-scripted conversation, so it's never really bothered me any, especially when used as a setup for a story. But after this conversation, we get an FMV of the Tantalus group arriving in Alexandria. Which swaps our perspective to a young black mage who gets his ticket stolen. I mean, why else would a random kid bump into you on a busy street? But our poor black mage doesn't realize it yet, and so on our way to the ticket booth, we get a name drop of a city that will totally not be relevant later. And while it was used on the ship, having this exclamation mark appear over your head when you can interact with things, even hidden items that aren't in treasure chests, is fantastic. There is a side quest and even an ultimate weapon that are just lying about, so without this mark, no one would have ever found this stuff without a guide. But oh wait, we're here for a major event. We should probably secure ourselves a hotel room before there are no more vacancies. Ah, darn. I guess we're too late. Wait, hang on. Sakana? Is that you? I can see why you started Phase. But let's leave the poor fishman alone for now, and get to the booth. And what do you know, we got a fake ticket from when we got bumped into earlier. But we are told to go find Alleyway Jack. The rat kid who bumped into us earlier is in the alley, and it's kinda weird that he just knows our ticket is phony, so I've always assumed that he pickpocketed us earlier so he could rope us into being his slave. Though, if he had swiped our ticket, he wouldn't need to sneak in. But maybe he just wanted our friend. Whatever. No time to dwell on it now if we don't want to be late for the performance. So, with no other way to see the show, we agree to the demands and help the rat kid take a ladder to a nearby steeple. The first time we try to climb the ladder, Kupo the Moogle drops down on our head and tells us that Moogles are going to be our safe points in this game. We can also ferry mail around between them for a side quest I'm not going to cover. But it's now that we're running along the roofs that the kids exchange names. The black mage is Vivi, of course, and the bad influence is Puck. Arriving at the castle just in time for the show to start. Oh god, what is that? Oh, it's just the queen. Quick, go back to the show! During the play, we get a mock battle that eventually spills out into the crowd for a Simon Says minigame. At least with Xbox prompts, I'm terrible at it. But when you finish, Zidane and Blank run off as an excuse to the next step of the plan. And depending on how well you do, the crowd gives a better reward at the end, and you can always keep retrying for a better grade. Inside the castle, the pair get some armor from the incompetent guards and then go to where the princess is. However, on the way, the princess actually runs into us. But while Zidane is busy flirting, Blank distracts him, allowing her to run off. And now we cut to another POV for the time being. The queen sends the knight, who she forgot named was Steiner, off to search for the princess after this pair of clowns say that the princess might be in danger. And while looking for the princess, he also has to round up his missing knights. While searching, we run up one of the castle's towers, and mercifully, it's not as tall as Shinra Tower. Upon reaching the top, in the distance we see Garnet getting chased by Zidane. From there, Garnet and Zidane swing from the castle onto the Tantalus ship and into the, basement. And the princess finally reveals who she is and asks to be kidnapped. Oh, how lucky for us. Before we can get too far though, Steiner finally catches up, and we have a battle which ends with Blank's armor getting destroyed and releasing all of the Oglops. And in the panic, Zidane and Garnet find themselves on stage and have to improvise. Luckily, it's Garnet's favorite play, and she is a great actor. She is so good at it that when she gets fake stabbed by Marcus, Steiner thinks it really happened. But then again, he might just be stupid. Vivi and Puck get chased while all this is going on, and Puck pulls a "I just need to be faster than you" card, and dips out on Vivi after he trips. The guards chase the young mage onto the stage, and when he casts fire to keep them away, he hits the princess's robe, which leads to another fight against Rusty. The airship starts to take off, but Braum can't allow the princess to get away, so tries to ground the ship with harpoons and a bomb. Unsuccessful at the attempt, Tantalus does get out of Alexandria, only to crash in the evil forest. Because a Final Fantasy game can't start you with an airship. You don't count. So Tantalus was successful in getting out with the princess. Wait, where'd she go? Well, that's where the ATE comes in. Usually optional, but sometimes not. These flesh out the world by showing us what is going on elsewhere. It's similar to Star Ocean when the party separates in town to do their own thing. But here it isn't necessarily nearby or just the party. I like these kinds of things that flesh out the world and make the characters feel like they have lives outside of the plot. But this ATE shows Vivi and the princess together, only for her to get captured by a giant plant. When Zidane finally catches up to Garnet, Steiner is already there, and the two team up to free the princess. Vivi is a little too scared to act, being a kid and all. In this battle introduces us to Trance, the game's limit break system. When a character takes damage, this gauge under the ATB fills up, and when it's filled, the character enters trance for a few turns that improves each character differently. You can stay in trance longer with more spirit, but I probably wouldn't worry about it too much because you have no control over when trance activates. Also, if you've entered trance, no matter how much gauge is left, it fully empties after the battle. So you can't hold a full gauge until a boss like you can in Final Fantasy VII, which I often hear is a complaint to the game, but I kinda disagree. If you could hold it until you needed it, it wouldn't make sense as a surge of emotion. And the game is really easy as is if you aren't trying to rob the bosses blind before beating them. Though, it is kinda silly to trance out against random enemies that you'd one-shot anyway. So maybe limit it to bosses, or enemies that are a threat. And because it's so unreliable, fights can't really be tuned around it going off, and it's extremely powerful. Like, Zidane can easily shave off half the final boss's health with one full trance bar, making it a huge power amp. As for this boss though, it heals itself by draining Garnet's health, so it has to be finished off before her health reaches 0, or it's game over. This is still an early boss, and with Zidane showing off trance, it's not really all that difficult. Before we can put it down for good, however, it escapes with the princess, and Vivi and Steiner blame themselves for this. And while Zidane is trying to reassure them that the princess isn't going to be eaten yet, another one of these plant monsters shows up and grabs Vivi. So different verse, same as the first, except Vivi casts fire on the monster, and Zidane doesn't have trance right out of the gate. With the trio's combined strength, the plant dies, but not before poisoning everyone with spores, except Zidane who made his dex save. Which is good, because it allows Zidane to bring them back to the Prima Vista. This issue gets resolved very quickly, as the pair are given a potion to drink to cleanse out the seeds in their body. But what really matters is that Baku wants to take care of the crew, and Zidane wants to go out and rescue the princess, which leads to Zidane getting kicked out of the group so he can take Steiner and Vivi out into the forest. Even though Steiner is reluctant to work with the thieves who kidnapped her in the first place. But before we set out, Blink gives us one final potion to use on the princess and reminds us to set our abilities. In this game, equipment all have a list of skills, but because everyone has their own classic Final Fantasy job, not everyone can learn every skill. Like for example, the feather hat has 2 skills on it to teach. However, while all 3 of our current party members can learn and use the add status ability, Vivi can't learn Bright Eyes. And while gear is equipped, you have access to any ability the character can use. But if you earn enough AP, you master that ability, and can use it regardless of your equipment. And regardless of whether an ability is mastered or not, it requires a set amount of these crystals to equip, so you're not able to turn on everything at the same time. I like this system more than materia or junctioning, as it gives every party member a distinct identity for the entire game. Though some of the generic options like auto haste are very powerful, and some of the status immunity abilities trivialize some bosses like we'll see later. Once we're all set up and reach the center of the forest, we find the princess and start battle with the boss plant in order to rescue her. He's pretty strong with his ability to cast magic and has a multi-target blind, but Blink shows up to help. And combined with Vivi casting fire on Steiner's sword, we can do big damage to put it down easily enough. Looking back at the footage, the fire sword uses Steiner's MP and not Vivi's, even though Vivi is the one casting. But there's no time to think about that right now, as smaller rose spiders start to chase the party. But that's not our only problem. The forest is getting petrified behind us, and in the escape, Blink gets grabbed by one of the plants and gets petrified by the forest, but not before tossing us a map so that we can make the Limblum, which is where the princess wanted to go. But before we can resume our journey, Garnet needs a rest for the night to recover after taking Blank's medicine. And while she's sleeping, Rusty blames all of this on Zidane. But after she wakes up, Steiner thinks that our hero put her in the situation because of the princess napping, so he shouldn't be praised for rescuing her, but Garnet cuts him off saying that she wished to be taken. And after this, we learn a little bit more about the world. The mist covering the land spawns deadly monsters and twists the mind and body, so we shouldn't linger for long. And though it takes some convincing, Steiner agrees that it is in the princess's best interest to be given time to recover. The next morning, Garnet learns about Blank's sacrifice and wants to help him, but as we have no way to do so right now, we need to keep pressing on. And according to the map we received, there's a cave towards the south that should hopefully get us above the mist, so at least we have a lead. And when we arrive at the place called the Ice Cavern, surprise surprise, it's cold. There is a gimmick of dodging these blasts of cold air and using Vivi's magic to melt some ice for some treasure. But before we can get out, the cold begins to freeze the party, with only Zidane not succumbing to the blizzard. The source of the blizzard is the Black Waltz number 1. Well, it's up to Zidane to deal with the boss in an honorable duel. Wait, he's summoning help? What a filthy cheat! I do kind of like the gimmick though. The waltz will heal the sea lion if it ever gets attacked, so once the waltz is dealt with, you can focus on the lion. And once that is below a certain threshold, its chest turns red and it can attack with a powerful tsunami. The challenge in this fight is that Zidane is alone, so your only way to heal is through potions. I hope you have enough to survive until trance. And I'm not sure if it's Steam Omaguri, but with the extra background space, some of the effect flashes aren't scaled up and it looks kind of funny. It is cool seeing how they animate the characters when they would otherwise be off screen though. And now that the waltz has been defeated, the blizzard has subsided. The party regroups and sets off, but before they go any further, it's noted that Garnet should take up a new identity to better blend in. Obviously Steiner opposes this idea, and shoves Zidane, which leads to one of his daggers falling beside Garnet. And using this object, the princess decides to change her name to Dagger. And finally, Zidane tries to get Garnet, Dagger, to speak more casually before heading out. The party arrives at Dali to rest at the inn and discuss what to do next. Steiner pleads to return to the castle and that Zidane shouldn't be trusted. But after Vivi falls asleep, the party figures that they should do the same. The next morning, or afternoon depending on how late Zidane slept in, It's probably like 2 in the afternoon if his sleep schedule is anything like mine. After waking up, he realizes that the party has already scattered to go exploring. And outside of the innkeeper and the mayor, the only villagers we see are children, and that's a little odd. Whatever, it's probably no big deal. We should probably go collect Dagger and Vivi to regroup at the inn. And after some time with Zidane and Dagger alone in the inn, she starts to get worried. Meanwhile, Steiner is cooking up his own plan to get the princess back to the castle. So the two decide they need to go look for Vivi. And when they go near where Vivi said he heard a chocobo quet, they hear a boy crying underground, which turns out to be him. And the plot now thickens. There's a mystery afoot. The missing adults are all down here working on something that seems to be related to the castle based on this crest. Deeper into this facility, we rescue Vivi from what appears to be a shipping container. Also down here is a machine that intakes mist in order to produce dolls that look eerily similar to Vivi. But before we get any answers, the group hides in a barrel and we swap to Steiner's POV. Trying to get answers about the airship, Steiner plays bad cop with an old man. Though, in classic Steiner fashion, it fails miserably and ends with the knight getting scolded for thinking that right and wrong are black and white. This is just the first in a few lines that relate to Steiner's arc of going from someone who believes blindly in authority to, well, not that. But the party meets up at their cargo ship, and Steiner lies about where the ship is headed. And though Zidane is skeptical, the second waltz shows up to interrupt the questioning. This boss will never target Dagger, but you will game over if she's the only one still conscious. He can also cast the tier 2 elemental spells, and will counter any spell that Vivi casts. He isn't terribly difficult because her healer is in no danger. And with the waltz defeated, Steiner and Zidane argue about how he knew the princess was here. And Zidane comes up with a great idea to hitch a ride on the airship, since it's going to Lindblom allegedly. And Steiner is almost too eager to agree, even volunteering to go on ahead to make sure that it's okay to get shuttled across the border. The party is aware that the ship is going back to the castle, but Zidane assures Dagger that he has a plan. And for reasons that will make sense shortly, the airship starts up while Vivi's asking if the Black Mage dolls look like him. Hurrying over to the ship to hop on before it takes off, it is revealed that the airship is ran by a crew of lifeless Black Mages who don't react to anything the party does or says. That is until Zidane commandeers the ship to turn it around to actually go to Lindblom. And so now that the ship has veered off course, the final waltz shows up to bring the princess home. He first wants to eliminate Vivi though. The crew come out to protect our little Black Mage friend, but unable to stand up against the power of the Black Waltz, the crew and cargo are blown from the ship while we can do nothing but watch in horror. This even upsets Steiner, so the boys all go out to confront this monster, while Zidane leaves Dagger to steer the ship, giving her the option to go to Lindblom or return home, and he will support her either way. In this battle, Vivi starts off in trance after seeing all those Black Mages plummet to their deaths, if they were even alive at all. His trance allows him to double cast black magic like some kind of red mage or something. Luckily, the boss doesn't counter magic, or we'd be swiftly defeated, especially without our only healer. He only counters with AoE Thundaras if he gets physically attacked while in the air. And to make matters worse, you're going to miss him with the attack that triggered said Thundara. But with both Steiner and Vivi being able to cast magic, this fight shouldn't be too bad. But after being defeated, instead of falling down,
this is where you fall down.
He flies off to take the clown's ship to chase us through the south gate. And once we do pass through the gate, even though we are physically safe, emotionally is another story. Dagger feels guilty about the damage on the south gate, while Steiner laments that the ship was damaged and the cargo lost. And finally, Vivi is still concerned that he is the same as those Black Mage dolls. But with some encouraging words from Steiner and Zidane, we can at least put that on the back burner for now. At the dock, both Vivi and Steiner stare in wonder, because Vivi is a kid, and Steiner is a country bumpkin who has never left Alexandria. Dagger doesn't share this wonder because the Regent is her uncle, so she's been here before, and because of this, we're allowed a meeting. Once we arrive in Regent Sid's room, we discover that he was turned into an Oglop from some mysterious invader, and then the same person kidnapped his wife and airship. And while Steiner thinks Zidane and his group pulled off the heist, Sid says that isn't possible for reasons we'll discover later. Sid then offers the party something to eat for lunch, and that discussing the important stuff can wait until the next day. But Zidane prefers his food less fancy, so heads off to get something in the city. At the pub, Zidane runs into an old friend Freya while he's hitting on a waitress. The two begin to catch up, and we learn that she is here to test her skills during the Festival of the Hunt, and that her boyfriend is still missing. She also says that there's nothing left in Burmecia for her now that Sir Fratley is gone. This is a great scene for exposition because it's a pair of old friends catching up. Zidane probably should have known about the festival, but it's brought up as an answer to a question about her boyfriend, which makes sense enough to me. Zidane then goes to check up on the hideout in the theater district. Small tangent, I really enjoy Final Fantasy XVI, but man, I really miss the old school style of following the MSQ. Information is given and you have to pay attention and not have a waymark, or constantly be interrupted with quest complete and quest accepted messages. It's great in MMOs to give experience, but it's really pace-breaking for single-player stuff. Anyway, tangent aside, once we arrive at the hideout, it seems the rest of the group hasn't made it back yet, but there are a pair of kids who run in claiming to have joined Tantalus since they have found some treasure. The kids also say that the princess probably misses us, so we should head back. But first, a detour to the shopping district to prepare for the upcoming festival. This is our first look at synthesizing, where you take two weaker items and fuse them into a better item. This is how the player acquires some of the best equipment in the game, and a trick with the cotton robe that nets you free money, is the item sells for more than the cost to make it. But, the UI only shows if you have the required items, not how many of them you have. And you'll never know if something is used for another recipe later, so you'll always want to hang on to at least one of everything. And so unless you're keeping track of everything you have to keep going out of the shop to check your inventory, and it's a little tedious. While Zidane is shopping, Dagger and Sid talk about the Queen, and we find out that once the King of Alexandria died, there was a change in Brahm's personality. And also that a strange man has been recently hanging around the castle. Dagger says that all of this worries her, but her concerns are just brushed aside, which leaves Sid as the only person she thinks her mother will listen to. But then Sid responds with a couple of truth bombs. Firstly, it was Sid who hired Tantalus to nab Garnet, and that he was working on a new airship that can fly without mist, and that his wife was the one who turned him into an Oglop and stole the airship. With this conversation done, and Zidane's preparation finished, he returns back to the princess's room, only to find a panicked Steiner because Dagger isn't here. Zidane doesn't think it's a big deal, but is a little curious. And when he hears her singing upstairs, we know where to go to see her. But there is a small snag in that we aren't allowed to use the elevator. Good thing we have a bunch of roguish tricks at our disposal so we can bluff a guard to knock him out and steal his armor. Once up on the roof, the pair have a deep conversation about Zidane's motivations, in that Zidane doesn't need a reason to help people, and is saying that the boss didn't agree with him helping her in the forest. And he got kicked out of the group for it, but it's happened before and will probably happen again. And after she asks how they were planning on doing it, Zidane explains that they were going to use sleeping weed to abduct her. And then Zidane agrees to give her the sleeping weed to help her with her sleeping issues. The conversation then moves on to Dagger's song, in that she doesn't even remember learning it, but it helps her when she is sad, and that it reminds her that she's not alone. She then starts to sing it again for Zidane, and we cut to Steiner and Vivi working on their own character arcs, which are Steiner's blind loyalty to the Queen, and Vivi comparing the black mages to action figures. At the end of the song, Zidane asks when she wants to go on that airship cruise. Whoops! That was the girl at the bar. But Zidane salvages and gets Dagger to agree to a date if he wins the festival tomorrow. If only real life worked this way. And before we get to the festival, I want to just briefly bring up the music for this scene. Because at first we have the normal music, but once we hear Dagger singing, that's the only music for the rest of the day. When the two lovebirds are talking, it's just silence until she begins singing again. Almost like to Zidane, he's 100% focused on Dagger. Granted, our little monkey boy is still an idiot and is getting Dagger confused with another girl, but it's still adorable. The next day, the festival begins, and it's similar to the running of the bulls, with a bunch of monsters getting set loose through the town, except here we fight back. And before the participants head out, they are debriefed on the rules. Defeat monsters within the time limit to acquire points, and the person with the most points gets a reward of their choosing. Zidane just wants some gil, but he also gets the date with the princess if he wins. Freya requests an add-on, and then to everyone's surprise, Vivi's asks what he wants, because Zidane signed our poor little boy up without asking, but he just wants some trading cards. Oh, and if a contestant is ever KO'd, they are out of the running regardless of their score. Near the end of the event, Zidane runs into the Zagnol attacking some kids, and being the good boy that he is, grabs its attention so that the kids are safe, and then Freya jumps in to help out. This big bad bull can cast thunder on one or both party members, but even with our best efforts, Zidane falls at the last possible moment. If he wants that date now, he's going to have to use his charming personality. This makes Freya the winner, and we are given a coral ring for our troubles. But before we can celebrate too much, a wounded Burmesian begs for reinforcements against an army of black mages before succumbing to his wounds. The bad news is that Cid has no forces to spare at the moment, and Freya isn't going to wait. It's kind of weird that just recently, Freya said she wasn't going back to Burmecia, and now she's rushing back at the first sign of trouble. Maybe this is one of those translation issues, smile. But the good news is that Zidane is going to help because he's a friend. And Vivi wants to also come tag along and try and get some answers in regards to the black mages. Dagger wants to come help stop this since Alexandria is involved, but Zidane says that she should stay behind. This is going to be a war zone, and people are going to die. And Dagger not being afraid for her safety just proves she doesn't understand the gravity and danger of the situation. And now with that settled, Cid is going to open the gate so we can head out on foot, but that will take some time, so he offers us a parting meal. Don't want to go traveling on an empty stomach after all. However, Dagger used the sleeping weed Zidane gave her to spike everyone's food, giving her and Steiner time to start their own journey back to Alexandria to confront the Queen directly. And I really like this conversation between Dagger and Steiner. He actually acknowledges that the Regent is concerned for her safety, and Steiner wants to protect the princess from the horrors of war, knowing how terrible it can be firsthand. But also, since he can't stop her from going, he is going to follow and protect her, and hopefully stop a war in the process. Once the party wakes up, they conclude that Dagger and Steiner might be on their way to Burmecia, because how would they know she decided to go to Alexandria? And in order to reach our destination, we have to travel through Giza Maluk's grotto. And right before leaving Lindblom, the Moogle reads a letter from Stiltskin with us, which says that the grotto is to our north. And no quest marker required. This will probably be the last time I mention how much I miss older design. Probably. But before we get there, a quick detour is in order. Arriving at Q's march, we run into a strange fellow complaining about being hungry. But after we hand them a frog, this person who looks like a chef introduces themselves as Quina. And once we do, their mentor, who is named Quail, comes out to call them a loser for needing help. And then he suggests Quina follows us to explore the world and taste many things. Before we leave, however, Vivi mentions that Quail looks a lot like his grandpa. So we go and ask and see if they knew each other. But as soon as Vivi says his grandpa's name, Quail says that he doesn't know who that bigot is. So I find that story very hard to believe. And at least Vivi caught on as well, but we aren't going to get anything out of him for now. And this detour gave us our very own Blue Mage, and Quina learns spells by eating enemies while they are at low health. And then while in the marshes around the world, you can collect frogs for rewards and a secret boss. But I'll leave that up for you to discover. We need to get back to saving Burmecia. Upon reaching the grotto, the guards are already dead, and Freya is obviously upset at the black mages. Zidane reassures Vivi that he didn't do anything, while Freya rushes in wanting to save the king. The gimmick to this dungeon is to find special bells to ring in front of locked doors to open them. And at the end of the dungeon, we have to fight the guardian, Giza Maluk. This is the first boss to give me a game over, even with an optional fourth party member. More of this would be nice, please. But as for the boss itself, he has a physical attack and can cast water on a single target or the entire party once he reaches low health. He can also counter magic attacks aimed at him with a silence. However, he's not immune to blind or silence, which can cripple his ability to damage the party. When the boss inevitably goes down, we swap to Dagger and Steiner at the south gate. And thanks to the bad smell of some pickles, Steiner is able to smuggle the princess past the gate so they can hop on a cable car and get to the city of Treno on their way to Alexandria. And here, Steiner praises Garnet for her intelligence and courage before getting reminded that he can't call her princess. He's forgiven because she also made mistakes when learning from Zidane, to which Steiner responds he had no manners and it is unacceptable how he treated her. But he also concedes that the thief had some wit, which is pretty big for Rusty, seeing at least some good in Zidane. But now we are finally at Burmecia, and Freya says that she has thought about home every night for the 5 years she was gone. No. Go away, we already talked about this. Once the party goes past the front gate, we are shown complete and utter destruction. The buildings are destroyed, there are dead Burmesians left laying in the street, and combined with the rain and music, it really sells the bleak atmosphere. We aren't even safe from random encounters in the city, and not even the treasure chests are safe here. Fighting through the random monsters, the party arrives to the steps leading to the royal palace. Freya pauses, expressing concern that it might be in ruins and she doesn't want to see that. Not that I blame her. Imagine being away from your home for 5 years, only to come back to see it destroyed by war. Zidane and Vivi try to encourage Freya to move forward, but she then asks if Vivi understands that finding the answer to who he is could change his life for the worse. To which he agrees that it could, but even if he discovers that he isn't human, he needs to get that closure. And before we can continue going to the palace, a surviving soldier runs down the steps, telling Freya to escape and that he hasn't seen the king, so at least he's probably still alive. And even if the king isn't here, Freya is now resolved to protect her home. And so arriving at the palace gates, we can't get through the front door, and the only way past is to parkour up this statue. And with Vivi and Quina not being as dexterous as the other two, they are left to find an alternate path. Not wanting to give up the element of surprise, Zidane and Freya hide, spotting the Queen and the General Beatrix. This causes Freya to have a flashback of Fratley saying that the General is even stronger than he is, and he went on his journey to gain more strength to protect his home should the peace ever end. And while he never came back like he promised, Freya travels the world in search of him, believing that he is still alive. But back to the present, a mysterious man arrives to talk to the Queen, who reveals that his name is Kuja, and that the Black Mages are his. Additionally, they have yet to find the king, so he is still alive someplace. And Kuja suggests that he has already fled to Clara, which is difficult for them to attack due to a protective sandstorm. We almost could have gotten away without having to fight Beatrix, but a Burmesian soldier runs up to try to defeat the general, so the party has to intervene to protect him. Thankfully, Quina and Vivi had enough time to get in, so we can take her on 4 versus 1. Beatrix is very powerful, and this is one of the fights that made me fall in love with this game as a kid. She can easily one-shot any individual member of your party. And even with the coral ring to heal from her Thunder Slash, her non-elemental attack does even more damage. But the good news is, you only have to survive so many attacks before she ends the battle with either Stock Break or Clim Hazard. Which means yes, you do not beat the general this time. And with the party on the ground utterly defeated by the villains, they leave to make their preparations to attack Clara. Kuja plays the pronoun game, saying that this boy could become a problem before taking off in his dragon with his theme playing. And we cut to the Insert Disc 2 image, so long as you're on the PlayStation 1 version. And that is how you end a disc. But this screen doesn't actually exist. And call me a bad fan, but I didn't even realize I had left Disc 1 until I was at the end of Disc 2 because of it. Oops. Anyway, Disc 1 ends on a really heavy note, so it's nice that Disc 2 starts with some levity with Dagger and Steiner at the cable car as they arrive at the summit. And we can't go down until the cable car from Alexandria comes up, so we might as well relax at the rest area for a bit. And oh hey, it's the members from Tantalus, which obviously leads into an argument with them and Steiner, until Dagger calls them her friends. Then, with the magic of ambiguous time, our ride arrives, so it's time to say goodbye. But as it turns out, Marcus is also going to Treno to get a super soft to cure Blank. Dagger wants to help because she feels at least somewhat responsible, but as Marcus says no, the car gets stopped. And when the conductor says it has a pointy hat, the heroes run out knowing it's a black mage. And not just any black mage.
Somehow,
Black Waltz
return.
This guy hits hard, but we go from a battle we can't win to one we can't lose. The Waltz can't actually damage Garnet, so as long as we don't KO her with friendly fire, he'll go down real quick. It's a cool set piece, but the once mighty Black Mage is reduced to a loot pinata. And once he goes down, Dagger inserts herself into the quest to save Blank, so we are on our way to Treno together. Arriving at Treno, the two boys get into an argument about what turned the city into a slum. Especially with Tantalus's plan to just steal the Supersoft, and Steiner isn't going to allow that. And they argue so much that Dagger just kind of wanders off. And once Marcus also leaves, we are left to control our lovable doofus to look for the princess. There are a lot of optional things to do in the city. The Stelazios you might have been collecting can be turned in for items. The card shop has Tetramaster, and the equipment shop has monsters you can fight. Finally, there's the auction house. And while it might be fun to spend some gil, Dagger thinks Marcus may have found the Supersoft, and so we need to go meet with Tantalus under the inn. Once we are ready and get on the boat, Baku asks if Dagger is sure about this, but she wants to make sure they don't take anything else. Steiner also reluctantly makes himself an accessory in order to fulfill his duty, to which Baku asks if the knight has any thoughts of his own, hoping that maybe some of Zidane rubbed off on him. And while the party is preparing to set off, we cut to Kuja at the auction house. It seems we know how Kuja got the money to enact his plans, which Garnet seems to be a part of somehow. Back on the boat, we get some of Steiner's inner monologue, and it appears that Baku's words may have shaken him a little, but he still ends up putting his faith in the queen. Which directly contrasts Dagger's inner thoughts, where she finds her own reason to help Tantalus and Blank. This takes us to the shop where the Supersoft should be. And while searching, someone comes down the stairs, but luckily for us, Dagger knows him. Dr. Tot was her teacher when she was a child, and he tells us to meet him at his house later and he'll give us the item we came for. Skipping to his house, Tot lets Marcus take the Supersoft, and then he has a flashback to a time when he taught Garnet about their planet Gaia. After reminiscing, Dr. Tot asks if there's anything he can do to help. Dagger explains the situation with the Queen, and so he tells us of a way to travel straight to the castle from under his tower. In this tunnel, we learn how to call the Gargant to shuttle us to the castle, and our ride turns out to be a giant bug with a carriage seat hanging off of it, so the group hops on. But before the ride resumes moving, Dr. Tot tells Steiner to use his own judgment when protecting the princess. Some way into the trip, the Gargant gets scared by something up ahead and stops until we deal with the, Ralvurahava? If I had 2 nickels for every time Garnet's transportation got stopped by a boss fight, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice. My poor pronunciation of this boss aside, it's easy pickings as long as you watch out for his attacks that poison and slow. Once the threat is dealt with, the party finally arrives under the castle, and promptly gets captured by the clowns Zorn and Thorn, so they can take the princess to the queen. But before we can see what happens to the princess, we cut back to Zidane and company in Burmecia where we left them. It seems everyone is okay, and collectively agreeing to go to Clara. The city itself is built on a tree and protected by a permanent sandstorm. While climbing up the tree, the party has to flip switches to gain access to new paths by manipulating the flow of sand.
I don't like sand.
Some of the random encounters here can pose a challenge. This sand golem will counter you if you hit its core while the main body is active, or the derpy looking zoo. It can remove party members by casting Swallow, so at least it's not a quitter, I guess. And make sure to have Queenus show it the Path of Gourmet, as he can learn White Wind from it. But when we arrive, the king asks for Freya, and while she does that, Zidane and Vivi get shown around town. With the tour ended, and Freya still with the king for potentially a long while, we should probably go rest at the inn, but it can never be that simple. We hear about a kid getting attacked by an antlion, so obviously we have to go and save him. Freya shows up, so we have the whole party for this boss. The antlion can be nasty if you aren't prepared to deal with the trouble ailment. Trouble Mucus inflicts, trouble, which distributes damage across the party, and he has a chance to counter physical attacks. By itself, that's not so bad, but the boss can drop the entire party to critical health with Sandstorm. So, you can be in a situation where everyone is healthy and you select attack, but before it goes off, the boss uses Sandstorm and then counters that attack, which will send you swiftly back to the main menu. And with Zidane and Freya only being able to physically attack, and Quina has limited offensive spells, caution is the name of the game here. With the Ant Lion taken care of, Freya wants to take Puck back with them to the king, but he just says tell his dad hi and runs off. And now back at the cathedral, we inform the king Puck is okay, before Freya takes part in a ritual to strengthen the sandstorm surrounding the city. However, at the end of the ritual, the harp's strings snap and the sandstorm disappears entirely. Meanwhile in Alexandria, Dagger thinks to herself that the queen has been acting strange since her birthday last year, when Kuja first came to visit, before the clowns bring her to the queen. And while in the queen's presence, Kuja shows up to put the princess to sleep so that the clowns can extract the summons from her. Back in Clara, fearing invasion, the party groups up at the entrance of the town to investigate. And I'm just going to ignore this line. The party doesn't make it very far before encountering Alexandrian soldiers. But while we were taking care of the soldiers, black mages have been released in the city. In those, Zidane leads the civilians around the city away from the black mages. At the cathedral, everyone would have been wiped out if not for the return of Sir Fratley. However, it seems Fratley has been afflicted with amnesia and forgot who Freya was, but lingering Dragon Knight memories made him come back to Clara in its time of need. This revelation obviously upsets Freya, but she's still happy that he is alive. Freya isn't allowed to grieve yet, as the city is still under attack, but Beatrix gets herself into the cathedral to steal the jewel off the harp, and with her mission now finished, she runs off with the party giving chase for a rematch. And this fight ends exactly the same as the first, except that we are still able to stand when she's done with us, with the Alexandrian forces retreating now that they have what they came for. And the black mages are just puppets, so they don't mind that we take a trip with them up to the airship, so that the party can see firsthand the power of the Eidolon when the queen summons Odin to destroy the entire tree. And while she is the general, Beatrix seems to have some humanity, because she starts to question the queen, and that maybe she's just been blindly following orders unlike Steiner, who she would think is acting freely because she only knows that he left the castle and got arrested and not why he did it. Finally, we overhear the queen saying that she's going to execute the princess when she returns home now that the Eidolons have been extracted. Luckily, the party can teleport directly to the castle using the teleportation pods. While all this is going on, Steiner and Marcus do a shaky shake to crash the jail cell into the wall so they can escape. Once out, Marcus runs off to go to the forest, just as the party arrives to fill in Rusty and the player that we have 30 real-life minutes to save the princess. And though there are no random battles, if the guards see you, they will give chase and drag you into battle. But they are slow to react, so you can just book it. Scouring the castle, we find a hidden path that leads us to the princess and a fight with Zorn and Thorn. These two are pretty weak, and they use their turn to charge up the other before releasing a powerful spell, but hitting them removes the charge, so they never actually get to attack. And once one is defeated, the other flees, ending the battle and the timer. With all the obstacles out of the way, the party tries to wake up the princess, but to no avail, and as we are still in the castle, we need to carry Dagger to safety. And once out of the secret path, Steiner and Zidane both blame themselves and not the usual pointing the finger at each other. This gives the clowns time to lead Beatrix straight to us, and we have a third battle which we still can't win. But following this fight, Zidane asks if it is her duty to protect the princess, which causes her to have a change of heart and betray the queen, and convinces Rusty to do the same. In the story beat, I don't see a whole lot. Beatrix asks for forgiveness from Freya, to which she responds it's too late for that, but follows it up with saying it's not too late to save the princess. Now with Dagger awake, the queen finally arrives and orders for Garnet to be arrested. But with Beatrix having seen the truth, she stays behind so the party can go back the way we came and escape, with Freya staying to help. But before we can get out, Steiner decides for himself to go back and protect Beatrix and Freya, and also entrusts Dagger's safety to Zidane. And we get a couple battles here with Beatrix as a playable character, and she isn't at all nerfed, easily one-shotting anything she hits. And finally getting back to the Gargant, it's once more stopped by a boss fight. The Ravui Mago can shrink your party to do massive damage with its stab. Additionally, if he's curled up and gets physically attacked, it will counter with an earth-based spell that hits everything, healing himself in the process. Once we deal with it and get the Gargant to start moving again, the boss gets back up and begins chasing us, causing us to miss our stop and go to the end of the line. And now with the commotion in the castle finished, the queen hires a pair of assassins, and so long as they get Garnet's pendant, it doesn't matter if she's alive or not. And one of the hired guns seems to have beef with Zidane and is going to prioritize his goal over the mission. The scene ending with the queen departing on her airship, likely for another attack. But we'll find out exactly what it is soon enough. After crashing, Vivi tells Dagger that we are pretty close to Lindblom, and Zidane thinks that the rest of our party and Tantalus are probably at Trenel already. So we should probably head to Lindblom and get an airship to arrive at Trenel ourselves. Though before we can get very far, the queen arrives with her army to attack the castle, which means summoning magic is soon to follow if Clara was a trial run. And yep, Atomos starts to suck up everything not nailed down, leading to a swift surrender by Lindblom to stop even more destruction. Zidane and Dagger go around Lindblom to survey, while Vivi has to stay out of sight, as no one on either side will take too kindly to him right now. Eventually, the pair run into Artania, who takes us to see Sid. During this conversation, Vivi is captured and brought to us, but is told to be let go since he's a friend. Sid says that Kuja came to Trenel from the north, suggesting that he's from the outer continent. And as the only supplier of black mages, if we take him out, there will be no more black mages, and also Brahm will no longer be manipulated into war by him. But with no airship or harbor, the only way off this continent is through a mine in the swamp to the north. Sid also gives us a world map, so finding the excavation site should be easy. Huh? Where am I? Oh, hang on, this doesn't look so bad. And oh, a secret? Now I'm interested. Ooh, hidden treasures? This is gonna be great. Ah! Oh no, I take it back. Chocobo Hot and Cold is what it says on the tin. You play Hot and Cold to find random items randomly hidden around in the dirt. The goal is to find these chocographs, which lead you all over the world to find the real treasure. I like the chocographs, they give a hint on where to try and find it on the world map. It's just the RNG of even finding them which makes this minigame painful, and the reason I've never even fought Ozma. With hot and cold behind us, it's finally time to go to the grotto where we first met Quina. After Clara, they found their way back home, and at this point are no longer optional because we need their love of frogs to find the mine shaft. Inside the mine, a chariot begins chasing us down while we have to dodge various traps and pitfalls. After a couple screens, it falls off the bridge and we are ambushed by one of the assassins, Lanny, which Zidane starts hitting on, but Dagger tells him to knock it off. Lanny lets it known that the queen only cares about the pendant now, and not her daughter's well-being. And since we obviously aren't going to just hand it over, we have ourselves a boss fight. Lanny has access to powerful magic and scan for some reason. I guess it makes sense for an assassin, but to actually cast it in-game seems like such a wasted turn. Lanny prefers to attack Dagger until she's down before swapping to Vivi and Zidane in that order. This isn't to say that she will only attack the highest priority target though, and after taking enough punishment, she'll just run off and let us explore the rest of the cave. In using some Gargants to go to different screens, we finally reach the exit, which does appear to be a mistless continent. Following the only path before us, we run under something that looks important, so we should probably check it out. The locals greet the party with the classic lolly ho. Rally ho. We are free to explore, and the locals are very friendly with Vivi, as if they know him. We soon figure out why, when Zidane runs into a black mage at the shop, and though he runs away, the locals tell us about their village to the southeast. So following the lead to the forest, there is an illusory wall that hides an entire village of black mages. We get a nice role reversal, with the black mages being afraid of us humans, and as these ones can talk, Vivi runs off to learn more about himself. In some of these conversations, Vivi learns that these black mages gained self-awareness and escaped from Alexandria to be free from humans. And also, the black mages inevitably stop moving, but they assume that they will eventually resume moving. But only the village leader understands what is happening, and he doesn't want to burden his village with the knowledge of death. As night falls, the party gets ready to sleep at the inn, but Vivi goes out to try and get more answers. Dagger is worried about the poor boy, but Zidane reassures her that it'll be okay, and maybe Vivi will finally have a place to call home. And then he told Dagger a bedtime story about a boy who knows nothing about where he came from. And even though he found a family, the boy continues to run away looking for answers. But even when he finds nothing, he is always welcomed back. Meanwhile, 288 tells Vivi that after about a year, the black mages all stop moving permanently. The next morning, we get information about a silver dragon to the northwest, past the dwarf village. And even though he is with his people, Vivi is going to continue traveling with us so he can tell the other black mages stories of the world. Back with the dwarves, we have to get through the other side of the village, but the locals have a strict rule that only those who go through with the ceremony may pass to visit the sanctuary. In finding out that the ceremony is just marriage, Dagger agrees to marry Zidane, and while he treats it very serious, she's just pretending so that they may pass. This leaves Vivi and Quina to get married so that the whole party may pass. And as we are leaving, a girl and a Moogle get chased out of the village for stealing food and run past us. We don't make it very far before running into the girl, who seems to have gotten herself stuck on a branch, and after we rescue her, she introduces herself as Aiko, and as she's a kid and lives nearby, we should probably make sure she gets home safely. And on the way there, we come upon a giant tree in the distance, which is assumed to be the sanctuary. And we also get ambushed by an ogre as our mandatory boss in every dungeon. This chunky boy has a powerful earthquake which hits the entire party for earth damage, which, because it's earth damage, float makes you immune. He also has an attack called the knockdown, but I don't think it removes float, even though you'd think it does. Finally, in low health, this guy can cast Kiraga on himself, but hitting him with either silence or reflect can deal with that. When he's defeated, we ask Aiko about her ability to use summon magic, and she says that her grandpa and everyone could do it. She also says that the sanctuary is called the Life Tree, but that's the wrong way to get to her house. Aiko lives in the ruins of Madain Surrey with a bunch of Mughals, and while we're here, Aiko uses this as an opportunity to impress Zidane with her cooking, so until it's done, we have time to look around. One of the Mughals wants to take Zidane to the Summoner Wall, and because she is also one, we go and grab Dagger. At the mural, we see pictures of every known Eidolon, and the Mughal Morrison explains that the Summoners are the ones who named the planet Gaia, and the Eidolons are the world's protectors. With dinner now on the table, Aiko reveals that she's the last of her tribe, and that the Life Tree has been sealed off due to a failed summon. But at night, after overhearing Zidane and Vivi talk, she agrees to break the seal so we can check it out. The tree itself has an abundance of mist, and when Aiko breaks the seal, we get a ruby, which lets her learn Carbuncle. Even though Dagger is also a summoner, the two have their own list of Eidolons that they can use, which keeps the two unique, even though they are both the same job. But after reaching deep into the tree, the party comes across a seemingly man-made platform, which ends up being an elevator, which leads us to yet another elevator that's shaped like a leaf. For some reason, it only reacts when Zidane steps on it. Mog says that she senses life below them, and the party starts to wonder why, if the source of the mist is here, it only appears on their continent. And Vivi thinks that there must be a connection between the Black Mages, Kuja, and the mist. When the party finally reaches the bottom, we don't see anything alive, but even Zidane and Dagger can feel something. Aiko tries again to flirt with Zidane, which causes him to reflect on if this is how he's making Dagger feel. Before the party finds any answers, something comes down from above to speak to us telepathically. This psychic tree explains what the mist is really for. This tree sends mist to other continents to increase aggression, which escalates into war and then the fall of civilization. And if we take care of this thing before us, no more mist will flow, so Kuja will be unable to make any more black mages to use as weapons. Ignoring that as an undead, healing spells injure or outright kill it, this is a great boss and a huge difficulty spike to Child Me. This boss has level 5 death, so make sure no one in the party, or at least not the entire party's level, is a multiple of 5. But if it is, you still have the option of casting life, so I guess it's a good thing that the boss is undead. He also has Mustard Bomb, which applies a pyretic effect to a single target, which means you die if you take an action while afflicted. And because Child Me thought a tree would be weak to fire, I'd keep throwing fire spells at it. Pro tip, don't do that, as it just ignites the boss, giving it access to an AoE fire attack that does heavy damage. And eventually, the soul cage goes down, preventing any more mist from being distributed. We can't celebrate this victory though, as one of the Mughals comes to call Aiko home due to some kind of emergency. Arriving back at Madain Surrey, we learn that the precious stone of the Summoner's heritage has been stolen. Aiko goes to pray to her grandparents before starting to look for clues. But we don't even need to go look for the clues, because Aiko gets captured and taken to the Eidolon Wall by the assassin we beat up on our way to this continent. Lani offers a trade. We give her the pendant and she gives us the girl. With no options, Zidane agrees to the trade, but her companion jumps in to rescue Aiko because he doesn't like using hostages or people who do so. He tells Lani to drop the jewel and scram, or he'll take care of her first. And now, with the partner gone, he requests a duel with Zidane, which he accepts in order to impress Dagger. The gimmick to this fight is the Scarlet Hair jumps around, increasing his evasion and countering physical hits. And when he loses, he does the whole, "Oh, I lost, kill me" thing. When Zidane refuses, the man doesn't understand and presses further, to which Zidane just shrugs and says that everyone is alive and they got the jewel back, so it's a good outcome, which infuriates the man and he runs off. Now with the items safely returned, Aiko wishes to leave her home and travel with the party. But before we go anywhere, Zidane finds Dagger on a boat under Aiko's house and goes down to talk with her. Dagger reflects on the adventure and that she feels a responsibility to live up to everyone's hopes. But Zidane reassures her that everyone had their own reasons and what they did wasn't solely for her. She then asks why he followed her, and he retells a story about Ibsen and his friend Colin. Ibsen asked his friend the same question, and both Zidane and Colin's answer is the same: because I wanted to. At this point, the boat floats off from the dock to give Dagger a view of the Eidolon Wall, triggering a memory causing her to pass out. After having some time to rest, Dagger tells Zidane and Aiko that she has only lived in Alexandria since the age of 6, and before that she must have lived here with the other summoners. And we'll have to ask Dr. Tot about it next time we're in Treno. And with all of that out of the way, it's time we head back to the Lifa tree to stop Kuja. As we are about to leave, the red-haired man shows back up again, asking why we let him live. Zidane doesn't have an answer, but says he should join the party and maybe he'll find out for himself. The man agrees, and says that people call him the Flaming Amaranth. Amaranth. Now back at the Lifa tree, Kuja shows up on his dragon, waxing poetic about revealing his true nature and that he doesn't care about the mist anymore. He lands at the base of the tree, so we rush in to face him down. Taking the path down to the trunk, the only way to progress further is to climb, and no one besides Amaranth and Zidane can do it. Amaranth tells Zidane to go by himself, but that isn't possible because they go all together or not at all. Zidane has a plan, but Amaranth says it's dumb and just grabs the kids to take with him, leaving Zidane to carry the princess. Kuja talks to himself about needing strength to beat him before the party arrives, and Kuja's "Oh brother" line is great for reasons we'll get to next time, but he also reveals that he didn't manipulate the queen, just helped her to get what she wanted. And with the queen showing up, he's going to prove it. Girly face. Sick, nasty burn. Braum orders the black mages to channel a single spell with the boats opening fire to buy them time. And even though mist can no longer be created, there is some residual mist which Kuja uses to create monsters to attack the party. While we dispatch them, Kuja flies off to deal with the queen, and Amaranth and Zidane both agree that they should stay out of it. But Dagger wants to try and save her mother, which is similar to how she wanted to protect her father at the start of the game in the play. Sure, that was a stage performance, but I do like the callback, so she hopes the sealed Eidolon at the tree will be able to help. After fighting through waves of mist monsters, the party arrives at the Eidolon to ask for its assistance, and while we do gain access to it, the Great Leviathan will be of no help here. And with the Black Mage's preparation finished, the Queen plays right into Kuja's hand and summons Bahamut. While it is strong enough to hurt Kuja, he was never in any real danger, and starts with the next step in his plan, taking control of the Eidolon. And after the fighting, the party finds Braum washed up on the shore, badly injured. Getting to see Vivi's inner thoughts, we see that he is conflicted, because he wished for this to happen and wants to be happy. But seeing Dagger so upset made him not sure if that's what he should be feeling. And the Queen's final words to her daughter are that the people will be happier with her on the throne. And we end the disc with the party returning to Alexandria so that Dagger can become the new queen. And that's it, the end of Disc 2 and the first major conflict. For those of you still here, thank you for sticking around and coming with me on this experimental journey. And even though I do poke fun at some things for entertainment, I really do love this game and hope that that enjoyment is properly expressed. And with Dawn Trail right around the corner, scripting for the second part will not start immediately, but I'm hoping to be able to get the video out by the end of this year, if not by the end of fall. I hope you will all join me next time when we solve all of the mysteries left unresolved.